Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First off, I'd like to say to everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I want to just address a couple of issues that seem to keep popping up throughout social media. That these people, they keep trying to use, thinking that they have some type of argument as a refutation against Muslim governments and what the Muslim governments are doing. So, amongst the different arguments is that they say that Saudi Arabia does not rule by the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, if we were to say that in every single regards, as far as does Saudi Arabia stone the fornicator, the adulterer, to death? No. Does Saudi Arabia still cut off the hands? No. Is there a reason behind a lot of this that is going on because of human rights groups and all that putting pressure on Saudi Arabia and whatnot? Yes. Okay. Does Saudi Arabia still flog the people? Yes. In fact, I knew an American brother that was lashed. That was lashed because he was in a house. I don't know the story because he did not say the story, because he was the son of one of the brothers who went to Saudi Arabia to study, and the son, he just got mixed up with some bad individuals, and he was in a house with he would, like I said, he wouldn't go into detail, but I'm assuming, this is my assumption, that he was either in the house with alcohol. It had to be alcohol, because if it was drugs, he'd have been he wouldn't be around right now. And he was flogged, and I saw him after he was flogged, and he had a hard time walking, and he was complaining about every time that he sat down. I knew judges. I sat down when I was in Saudi Arabia, because when I was in Saudi Arabia, I used to work with some princes that were connected with Huda TV and all this, and they were doing dawah, and I was invited a lot to the house, and participated with them in different discussions. And at different times they have different judges. One of the judges from the royal court, and all these judges that I ever met, all of them were Salafis. I never met a judge in Saudi Arabia except that he was upon the Quran and the Sunnah. All right, that's just to be clear. I met these individuals personally, and I sat down with all of them personally, and even the princes that I sat down with, they would say, no, this is Quran and Sunnah. This is what we believe in. This is what we always believed in. Now, I've never heard anybody say anything different. Now, because the country gets pressure from different human rights groups, and they leave off some of the judgments, some of the things in regards to the Sunnah. Now, we don't say that that's a good thing that they left off the Sunnah, obviously because of pressure from the people, because we're more we're not supposed to we don't fear when we're doing the actions for Allah. We don't fear what any criticizer says about us. All right, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to have the attitude. And if a Muslim is weak and he doesn't have the attitude, we don't take him out of Islam. And we don't, we just give him advice. The people that have the ability to give him advice, they should give him advice. But to sit there and say that there's no Quran and no Sunnah from these types of individuals in Saudi Arabia is foolish. And they've never been in the court system in Saudi Arabia. All the court system, just to give you a brief summary for the people that don't know, there's two types of, there's different types of schools in Saudi Arabia, right? You have the public school. Then you have the madaris al-khasa, which are the private schools, but these are private schools for Saudi students. And then you have the madaris al-dawliya or alamiya, which are the international schools, which the curriculum is mainly in English. These are the schools that, all the expats, they send their kids to. And all the brothers in Saudi Arabia that taught in school, they taught in these schools. They don't teach in the private schools, because the private schools are all Saudi students. All right. So mostly it's Egyptians, Jordanians, and whatnot, and some Pakistanis. They teach in the private schools, but you'll find the American brothers, the British brothers, and the more educated Egyptians and more educated Pakistanis, they teach in the international schools. All right. But then you have a different type of school, which is like a Mahad al-Ilmi. This school is the focus of it is only on Islamic education. All right. So the people that are going to go the route of going to like Kulliyat al-Sharia and Mahad al-Qada, which Kulliyat al-Sharia, of course, is like the Islamic law school. It's focusing only on fiqh. mainly on fiqh, not only on fiqh, because they still study aqidah, they still study all these things, but the primary focus is on fiqh and ahkam and qada and stuff like that. So then after that, the people that are going to go on to become a judge will go into Mahad al-Qada, which is the institute for judges. It's a judges institute. And they go through this program, and then after that, then they actually become a judge. The only Westerner that I know of that has finished this program is Fareed Abdullah. And go ask Fareed Abdullah what they study. If anybody has any doubt as to what's studied in this program for the judges, go ask Fareed Abdullah. I mean, first off, in Kulliyat al-Sharia, they go through like, back in the old days, they used to go through like, the main books that they depended on, like Subul al-Salam from Sanani. They depended on Fath al-Qadir, the Tafsir al-Shawkani, because the Tafsir al-Shawkani focuses more on the ahkam. He focuses, alhamdulillah, it's a tafsir, but because of Shawkani being from amongst the muhaddithin and the fuqaha of the muhaddithin, so that comes out in his tafsir a lot. So he deals a lot with the ayat al-ahkam. So they used the tafsir of Shawkani back in the days for this purpose. And of course, the students are introduced to like al-Mughni, Ibn Qudama, Nail al-Otar, al-Shawkani, and books like this. These are the books that they use, and primarily that they go back to as their resources. When they were going through Kulliyat al-Qada back in the days, they would focus on like memorization of Bukhari and Muslim and whatnot. So these are the judges, all right? And these are the people that actually go and they're at the heads of all the courts in Saudi Arabia. And they come out of these programs. First off, they come out of this school that focuses only on Islamic studies. They study like, for example, math and science just to get the credits. But their primary studies, they're studying like Usul al-Thalatha, Kitab Tawheed, they're studying books of fiqh, all of this, and focusing on Nahu and the different sciences of the Lughat al-Arabiyyah. This is their primary focus throughout their whole education, all the way up and through high school, and then they graduate high school, and then they go to Kulliyat al-Sharia, and then after Kulliyat al-Sharia, Mahad al-Qada, and then they become judges, and then they work their way up through the court, through the system. Some people become judges for the king, and some people just become judges in the regular court. So I met one of the judges that was the judges for King Salman. Allah Mustaan, I sat down with him and I had coffee with him. And all we talked about was Quran and Sunnah the whole time. That's all we ever talked about. That's all I ever heard any of them talk about. Whenever I met one brother, he's a Saudi brother, he was a teacher. He was one of the professors. He graduated from Mahad al-Qada, but he taught in Kulliyat al-Sharia. But he was a judge. And all we ever talked about in all those majalis was Quran and Sunnah. So I don't know where these people get this stuff from. I don't know where they get their understanding of Saudi Arabia from. Like I said, I'm not going to praise Saudi Arabia for like the Halloween stuff and all that. These are sins, and people need to make tawbah from that. But if you speak a word about it, people don't spread lies. Don't spread lies. Yes, Saudi Arabia, just like everybody else, they make a lot of mistakes. And I'm not like recording this message to the people like, oh, I'm super. The people need to understand my situation. Number one, because this goes back to the second issue. I was in Yemen when that war started, and Saudi Arabia was bombing Yemen. And one of the things that these people keep saying is that, oh, Saudi Arabia is killing kids and they're killing children. No, they're not. The whole time that I was there, and I was there through the whole bombing campaign of Saudi Arabia on Sana'a, and they were bombing the military facilities. That's it. They weren't bombing residential neighborhoods. They weren't bombing any of this stuff, right? Now, you have later on in the war, what happened, what you saw in the news, was that you had these little transmitters. Because what Saudi was doing was they're using smart bombs. So they relied on people from Ali Abdullah Saleh, the former president of Yemen, rahimahullah, he died. They relied on his people to put these transmitters in the military bases so that Saudi could bomb the places where those transmitters were. Apparently the Houthis found these transmitters and they put them into some people's houses, and they put them into a funeral procession, which caused Saudi to bomb those things on accident. Now, that was not I wouldn't say that it's not the fault. Somebody has to take accountability for it. But let's be fair. It wasn't that Saudi was going out trying to bomb those things on purpose. So these people, they try to make this like lie and say that Saudi's killing kids, Saudi's killing women. That's a lie. That's a lie. When I was there, nobody's only one house I knew of it got hit, and that's because somebody put a transmitter in the house, and that was my wife's family's neighbor. His whole house got destroyed, and the family of 5 got killed. Yes, because they put the transmitter in his house. He lived next to the military base. That did happen. Okay. But was it meant to happen? No. People are going to be held responsible. Yes, no doubt. That's a life. That's a Muslim life. That's a man and his kids. They got killed. It's a loss of Muslim life. Somebody is definitely going to be held responsible. Each person is going to be held responsible on the day of judgment for that. That's a loss of a life. Allah musta'an. And then imagine that the woman, the wife, she wasn't in the house at the time. And then she comes back and her whole family's dead. So yes, that happened. But if we look at who was killing the women and children, it's the Houthis. Now, anybody that downplays the atrocities that the Houthis did in Yemen, they have no clue of what's going on in Yemen or what's going on in Yemen, nor should they ever talk about the situation in Yemen if they downplay any of the atrocities that the Houthis did. The Houthis are responsible for more deaths in Yemen, and Saudi stepped up to put a stop to it. All right. Could the war have been carried out better? Yes. It could have there been a better strategy and a better way of dealing with it? Yes. But it's too late for that now. Allahumma musta'an, what happened. So the thing is that they tried to stop the Houthis before the Houthis got control of Aden. Because if the Houthis got control of Aden, you do not want to even know what would have happened to this dunya. And if you think that this is a small issue, that the Saudis were exaggerating, then you're wrong. Because everybody in Yemen, at the time when Saudi was invading Yemen, everybody that I know of, except for the Houthis, wanted Saudi to get involved in the war to stop the Houthis from spreading down to Aden. If they had got control of Aden, wallahi, you don't even want to know what the state of this world will be if that would have happened. So Allahumma musta'an. So anybody that speaks other than that, they're speaking without knowledge. And anybody that lived in Yemen during that time will tell you exactly what I'm telling you, unless they're Houthis. Of course, the Houthis will tell you something else. They'll tell you the opposite of reality. Because they're Rafidah. La'natullahi alayhim. So, that's two things. So, Saudi is not judging by the Kitab wa Sunnah and their court systems and then the rulings and judgments. That's a lie. Saudi's killing kids and children in Yemen. That's a lie. And I was in the war. And I lived in Saudi Arabia. And in fact, if anybody wants to say anything about my stance in regards to this, well, then let them know that Muhammad James and Muhammad James's 3 children and his wife are all banned for life from going to Saudi Arabia. I'm banned for life. Because during the war, me and my kids, we went to Saudi Arabia to flee the war, and we couldn't get our paperwork fixed, so we stayed there for 6 years illegally. So the 6 years that I stayed in Saudi Arabia illegally, and when I went there, they fingerprinted all of us and banned us for life. The only thing that we can do is we can go back and do Umrah and Hajj. That's it. And we have to leave the country immediately. So if anybody says that this is his, he just loves Saudi, and no, number one, I studied with some of the ulama in Saudi, but my studies are in Yemen. I studied and I benefited from Sheikh Yahya in Yemen, from his durus in Yemen. That's where I learned my religion was in Damaj. I did not learn my religion in Saudi Arabia. By the time I went to Saudi Arabia, I'd already been in Yemen for 15 years. So it's not in defense of this country. It's in defense of the truth. It's in defense and it's a refutation of these liars like Daniel Pikachu and all these other people that keep running around and saying and making these false statements. Because number one, let's look at their background. Let's go deep into their background. All of these people. Pikachu, Ali Dawa, Muhammad Hijab, Riyadh, and all these people. What's his name? Al-Andalusi, and all the people that are affiliated with that institute in Canada. Let's look at all of their backgrounds. Where did they study Islam? Is there the education that they got? Was it Islamic or was it secular? All of them, they got secular educations. All of them. So all of them got secular educations. They never studied in the Islamic world amongst the ulama. And even if you try to sit down with them and try to say, who did you study with? They say, oh, I studied with known ulama. Who are your known ulama? Who are they? Who are they? Well, who did Ali Dawah study with? Who did Muhammad Hijab study with? Who did Daniel Pikachu study with? Where did they study? No place. Exactly. They haven't studied anywhere. They don't have an Islamic background. So now they know more about the Islamic world than all the brothers that lived there for decades. I know brothers that have been in Saudi Arabia and still in Saudi Arabia till today. They've been there for 35 years or more. I know brothers that have been there for decades. Now, why don't you go back and ask them what their opinion about Saudi Arabia is? Why don't you go ask them whether or not Saudi Arabia rules by the Kitab wa Sunnah and the majority of the issues. Now, I'm not saying every issue. No country on the face of the earth judges in every issue by the Kitab wa Sunnah. No country. But the majority of the things, yes, they do. Now, the things that they don't do, like I said, it's a lot of pressure that comes from human rights group. And that's why they stopped doing a lot of the things they did, because of pressure. Not because they didn't agree. They still, if you go to the king right now, Allah yahfadhu, Allah yuslihu. If you go to the king right now and you ask him, is stoning to death the correct punishment for an adulterer in Islam? I guarantee you he will say yes. He will say yes. So if they leave it off, it's because of pressure from human rights, the United Nations and these human rights groups and all this stuff. It's because of pressure. It's not because they're leaving it off because they're not satisfied with it or they think that something else is better, because that would take them out of Islam. And we agree on that. If you leave off the Sharia, if you leave off the Quran and the Sunnah for something else, and you feel that that something else is better than the Quran, yeah, of course, he's a kafir, no doubt. Are they doing that? No. Does Pikachu or any of these other individuals from the khawaarij, do they have any evidence that these individuals are doing this? No. So they talk about things they don't know. Talk about Yemen, they never lived in Yemen. I lived in Yemen for 15 years, and I know many brothers that were in Yemen for 2 decades. And I lived in Saudi Arabia for 6 years. And I know many brothers that were in Saudi Arabia for 3 decades. And trust me, I've never heard this garbage that they keep talking about. And I sat with the people. If you want, you can go on the internet, you can find the pictures of me with those princes. You all right? Not that I even like to be around them. But they, and not that I like the people taking pictures of me with them, but they exist. All right. I sat with them. I sat with the judges, and everything that they say is a lie. It's a pure lie. They have no knowledge of what they're talking about. They're just a bunch of people that have a secular educational background that want to sit in the West and incite violence against Muslim governments. Pikachu, didn't you used to be a Rafidi? Then you used to be Shi'i. Aren't you from Iran? Then you're supposed to make Tawbah to the Sunnah. Don't you know that it's from the Aqidah of the Shia that they see it's permissible to make khuruj on the Wali al-Amr if he's not from Bani Hashim? So it looks like you still got some of that Tashayyu' Fiqh, Pikachu. Looks like you still got it. Allahumma musta'an. You still got a little bit of that Shia in you, huh? And you're trying to call the people of the Sunnah to the da'wah of the Rafidah. Akhzaqallah. Ah, man, la barakallahu fihi. And these types of people, wallahi, look, he's supposed to claim to have made Tawbah from this. Now he's in the Sunnah, but he's still calling to the same thing that they call to. Who's the one group of people that wanted to see the destruction of Saudi Arabia more than the kuffar? Well, I mean, they're kuffar too, but the Rafidah. The Rafidah are fighting night and day just to see the destruction of Saudi Arabia. But now, let's look at this. Why is it just Saudi Arabia? Did they not celebrate Halloween in Turkey? Did they not celebrate Halloween in Qatar? So why aren't they talking about these 2 places? Is drinking alcohol allowed in Turkey? Is drinking alcohol allowed in Qatar? Why aren't they talking about these 2 places? Oh, I don't know why they're not talking about these 2 places, because these 2 places are the refuge of the Ikhwani Muslimin. They don't seem to want to talk about these 2 governments, but they talk about Sardiya day and night. So yes, they were celebrating Halloween in Qatar. They had DJs and parties and underground music and all this stuff going on in Qatar, but they don't talk about that. They don't talk about what's going on in Turkey and all the stuff and all the facade and corruption that goes on in Turkey. but they just want to put their microscope on Saudi Arabia and focus on Saudi Arabia. So I ask you, you Ashab al-Inhiraf, who rules closer by the Quran and the Sunnah? Saudi Arabia or Turkey? Answer that question. Secular government of Turkey, who claims and even tells you that their government is secular, who rules closer to the Quran and the Sunnah? Don't even try to answer. And who rules closer to the Quran and the Sunnah? Saudi or Qatar? But y'all don't talk about these countries. You just want to talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia this, Saudi Arabia that. That's all your concern is. It's like you got this infatuation with seeing the collapse of Saudi Arabia. So maybe all these individuals that are associated with Hizb ut-Tahrir, maybe we need to see who y'all are working for. Allahumma musta'an, because y'all keep accusing other people. Like Ali needs dawah, kind of like insinuating certain things about Sajid. Well, about who he might be working for, because he's teaching you the Sunnah. Maybe we need to look and see who you guys are working for. What agency you guys, because you're the ones who are trying to cause the destruction and downfall of Islam. So Allahumma musta'an. Allahumma musta'an.